In this video, I'm going to show you how to learn any language fast, how to understand it and how to speak it, without wasting time, without using useless green apps, without studying endless grammar rules, boring classes, without wasting thousands of hours watching Spanish with Juan. If you follow the method I'm about to teach you and you stay consistent, you can get fluent in 3 to 4 months. Maybe 6 if you're lazy and you take it easy. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks if you work really, really hard. Ready? Let's go. Learning a language is very simple. You just need to master 3 things. First, you need to know a lot of words. Second, you need to recognize those words when you hear them. You need to know the sounds, pronunciation. And third, you need a ton of speaking practice. That's it. Simplified. Sounds simple, right? But that's really it. Because without enough words, you can't understand or say anything. And without being able to recognize those words, without knowing the sounds of the language, you won't understand native speakers and they won't understand you either. And without speaking practice, you will not be fluent. You will always hesitate and you will be afraid of speaking if you're shy, etc. So you have to hit all 3 areas if you want real fluency. Let's start with vocabulary. You need to learn around 10,000 words. Yes, 10,000. And the fastest way to do this, mnemonic associations. You don't learn vocabulary by comprehensible input, getting exposed to the language, and you don't grind random lists either. Learning by brute force, no, you don't do that. That's very slow and ineffective. The fastest way to do it is with mnemonic associations. You create mental images that connect the word to its meaning. If you do this, your brain will remember them much more easily. And you'll be able to learn over 100 words per day this way. So forget about pure rote memorization. It's really slow and a waste of time and extremely ineffective. Flashcards are okay, but if you don't combine them with mnemonics, it's not going to work all that well. You're going to need a lot of repetition. And spaced repetition is good, but again, combined with mnemonics, it's 10 times faster. So start with the most common words, the most common verbs, adjectives, nouns, and then memorize more and more vocab until you know around 10,000 words. That should be enough to understand 99% of the vocabulary that you'll encounter in the language. Like I said, use mnemonics. You can memorize thousands of words insanely fast if you use mnemonics. A weekend of really hard work can change everything in your language learning journey if you give mnemonics a shot and you actually work hard. Speaking of working hard, let's talk about grammar. Here's the truth. You don't need to study grammar at all. You're going to have to study a lot of vocabulary and memorize it, but you don't need to study any grammar at all. Unless you really like grammar books, you don't need to do any of that. Multiple choice quizzes, all that stuff, forget about it. You don't need it. You can learn grammar naturally by reading and listening to the language. Again, once you know enough words. When you read and listen a lot, you see all the grammar in real context over and over again. And your brain will recognize the patterns and you will learn it automatically. That's how you learned your native language. You didn't learn grammar before you learned to understand and speak the language, right? You learned grammar because they forced you to in school. So forget about the grammar. Treat it like a dictionary. When you've got a question and you're not sure about something, go check the grammar. But that's it. Now let's talk about comprehensible input. Reading and listening are key in language learning. But they're much more powerful when you already know the words, when you've already memorized the words. If you try to learn just by input without memorizing vocabulary first, you'll barely understand anything and you'll be stuck in beginner content forever. But if you first attack vocabulary hard and you learn thousands of words, and then you start reading and listening to example sentences, everything will become much easier. You'll pick up all the grammar naturally, you'll learn pronunciation naturally, and it will become much easier and much more fun to continue reading and listening to native speaker content. Now let's talk about speaking practice. Let's be realistic here. You will never learn to speak well just by listening and reading. All those people talking about learning the lazy way and comprehensible input is the only thing you need, they're all lying to you. Don't listen to that stuff. you need to do a lot of speaking practice. Speaking is a physical skill. It's like singing or any kind of sport. You don't learn boxing by simply watching fights. You don't learn to play the piano by watching concerts. And you don't learn to speak by listening to native speakers. It does help, but you need speaking practice as well. You actually need a lot of it. And you have to do deliberate speaking practice every single day if you want to improve relatively quickly. The gurus who say input is enough are wrong. They are actually wronger than wrong. And if you only do input, you'll sound hesitant, slow, and broken forever. You'll understand the language, but you won't be able to use it well. And the same applies for those who say, just move to the country or get a girlfriend who speaks the language. Sorry, but living abroad doesn't magically make you fluent. There's nothing in the air in the country that teaches you the language by breathing. You have to do the work. Real practice, every day. Now, here's my secret weapon for speaking fluently fast. Language islands. You make a list of everything you want to be able to say in your first conversations, common topics like your job, your hobbies, your family, plans. You write it all down in English, then translate it into your target language, and you practice saying those sentences over and over again, aloud. You can also create audio files and listen to them and repeat. You need to write down absolutely everything you want to be able to say and then repeat it again and again and again. If you learn and master 1,000 useful, relevant sentences, you can hold real conversations in any language. You can get there in a few weeks if you're serious about learning. But you have to practice consistently and you have to speak aloud, not just in your head. Repeating full sentences aloud is excellent training for your speaking skills. It helps you flow in the language, sound much more natural. It kills hesitation. It makes you think directly in the language instead of trying to translate word by word or form sentences in your head, thinking about the grammar and all of that. Your pronunciation will also improve a lot if you shadow thousands of sentences by listening to them and repeating after them. And in order to improve your fluency and correct your mistakes, you should also train translation, active recall. You look at the sentences in the English version of the language islands and you try to say them in the target language without looking. And then you check if you're right or wrong. And you'll make a lot of mistakes, but you'll get the feedback immediately every time. And then you try again. And you do thousands of reps of this, and it will help you think quickly in the language, automatically in complete sentences, and it will give you feedback on your mistakes, and you will correct most of them very quickly. And you will build quick reaction time for conversations. The combination of shadowing and active recall is extremely powerful when it comes to improving your speaking skills. Like I said, you need to talk a lot on your own. Talking to people is great, but if you do this prep work first, you'll sound way better when you talk to them and you'll be much more confident, so you'll make the most of it. So, in short, you attack vocabulary head-on with mnemonics first. First order of business is learning as many words as possible. Then you read and listen to example sentences over and over again to learn the grammar and also review all those words that you learned. You practice your speaking deliberately every day. You build language islands for real conversations, all the sentences that you want to be able to say. And you do active recall, translation, to learn to think in the language and correct your mistakes. This system works every time. It's worked for me in over a dozen languages, and it will work for you too, like it worked for hundreds of students. You can waste years using apps, taking classes, and hoping for the best. You can watch thousands of hours of nonsense on YouTube, Comprehensible Input, hoping that someday you'll be fluent. Or you can follow this method, grind hard for a few weeks, and get real results. If you want to give it a try, join my 7-day challenge. You'll learn your first 150 real, useful conversation sentences in just 1 week. The link is in the description. Now let's get fluent.